Distinguished members on the dais, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard the last almost 90 minutes, much on the book and more on the personality. Let me first congratulate Professor Mukherjee for writing a very readable book, which you can finish reading maybe in 2 hours or even 3 hours, but he really distills the essence of Nehru in this volume, and I congratulate him for this achievement. I don't want to add much to what has been said, except that one of the big takeaways is that the idea, not just of India, but the idea of Nehru itself needs to be defended. Needs to be defended from its old critics, from its new critics, and it has to be reinterpreted for a changing India. So I want to begin by giving you a bit of good news that 3 weeks ago, the Jawaharlal Nehru Memorial Fund announced the creation of a digital archive on Nehru. Now, this should have been done many years ago, I know, but better late than never. And a group of young men and women dedicated to the ideals of Nehru have got together. I think Rishi is somewhere here. One of them was here when I first came in. But these are a group of youngsters who are wedded to the idea of India and wedded to the ideals that Nehru stood for, championed, and fought for. And the idea is that by November 14th, 2025, you will have a cutting-edge digital archive available not on your laptops, because laptops are obsolete, on your smartphone. And the idea is that not only would the 100 selected works of Nehru be available, the books by Nehru would be available, the speeches of Nehru between 1917 and 1964 would be available, his parliamentary interventions over a 17-year period, much of which have not been published actually, will be easily available. The writings on Nehru by his contemporaries, which is a huge amount, were written by his political contemporaries as well as by others who worked in different circles like diplomats, economists, and political leaders and journalists from across the world. And some material that is lying around in various archives across the world on Nehru. So the idea is that we would create this digital archive available to everybody easily, and of course downloadable in a format that the reader would like. So this is I think a major initiative at reclaiming the Nehruvian legacy, and not only reclaiming it, but actually reaching out to a much larger audience, not only reaching out to a larger audience, but reaching out to a younger audience who is fast losing the capacity to read books, but is developing the capacity to spend 3 hours or 4 hours on a screen. So we have to make Nehru relevant to the screen, and that's the idea of this digital archive. And I hope on the 14th of November 2025, we will meet, or thereabouts, we'll meet in this hall, and we will all see what the archive looks like. It's really top of the line digital archive, built somewhat along the lines of the Wilson Center archives, which is perhaps today the best archive of material relating to the Cold War that is available to all and sundry. So this is the good news that I wanted to start with. I just want to say that we all live in the shadow of Nehru. Many of us have assimilated Nehru, and many of us contest Nehru. And even those who contest Nehru cannot run away from the shadow of Nehru. And 2014, my friend Manoj Jha spoke of 2014 as a turning point as far as the Nehruvian legacy is concerned. It's in many ways, after 2014, the story is one of governance through maximum criticism of Nehru. In fact, today, I'm just coming from Parliament, and we passed a bill, and it was a bill called the Boilers Bill. I mean, you won't even know what this Boilers Bill is all about. It's a bill to regulate boilers which generates steam in factories. And Nehru figured in this debate. I was amazed that the minister could somehow justify the bill on the grounds that this was not done during the Nehruvian era. This was, it was a Nehruvian fault. Earlier, of course, we had a statement by the External Affairs Minister on the agreement that was signed last month, or in October, between India and China. And it reflects the difference between the Nehruvian era and today, that in November, in the last week of October 1962, when the first phase of the Chinese invasion was over, on the 28th of October, 7 members of Parliament write to the Prime Minister asking for a special session of both houses to discuss the crisis on our borders. And the Prime Minister replies to these MPs. One of the MPs was Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee, and he advances the Parliament session. The Parliament session was supposed to begin on the 13th of November. It actually begins on the 7th of November, 1962, and it goes through the second phase of the Chinese invasion. The Chinese are invading. The second phase starts on the 14th of November. Parliament is in session. The Prime Minister is listening to members of Parliament belonging to different political parties bitterly attack him and the former defense minister. The defense minister had resigned by then. And this was when the Chinese invasion was actually going on. And today we had the extraordinary spectacle of the foreign minister reading an 8-page statement on the border situation with China, with no political party being allowed to raise a single question or a clarification from the minister, or seek a clarification from the minister. When the minister was, when the people concerned were reminded about it, all the response that they could come up with, "Oh, Nehru ka zamana tha." So even there, they had to recall the memory of Nehru. So it's really people who have assimilated the legacy, and people who want to further the legacy, and of course, people who contest this legacy. But I must tell you that there are, in this population of those who contest this legacy, there are, of course, the Kattar rejectors, and there are those who are still ambivalent, and those who accept certain aspects of the Nehruvian legacy while questioning some aspects. And it's quite extraordinary. We tend to paint the entire right-wing ecosystem as anti-Nehru, but actually my experience is there are large sections in the right-wing ecosystem who are actually ambivalent about Nehru. And if you push them a little, they will say, yes, but this is right. And they'll say, yes, this was demanded at that time. This was the context in which these decisions were taken. So people, are willing to admit that even those who are his critics, when push comes to shove, are willing to accept the fact that Nehru faced extraordinary challenges because of the period in which he lived and worked, and the responses that came about at that time were perhaps relevant or the only ones available to him in the 40s and the 50s and the early 60s. So I think we should build on this. I believe that the constituency who want to assimilate, who want to understand, and who want to appreciate the Nehruvian legacy is much larger than we give credit for. We think that there is a small minority of people who are admirers and assimilators of Nehru, and there's a larger and larger population which wants to reject him. I don't think that this is quite accurate. I think I am seeing this in the younger generation. I'm seeing this amongst the students I talk to, and even amongst people, as I mentioned to you, even amongst the people I interact with in political parties. Of course, there are people who have converted themselves to the Nehruvian worldview after 2014. Professor साहब, मैं कहना चाहता हूँ कि 2014 के पहले कई आलोचक थे पंडित जी के, वो 2014 के बाद प्रशंसक बन गए हैं। वो 2014 अजीब सा मील पत्थर है। तो 2014 के बाद कई लोग पंडित जी के प्रशंसक बन गए हैं। मैं आपका नाम नहीं ले रहा हूँ, आप हमेशा पर कई ऐसे विचारधाराएं हैं जो नेहरू के समय नेहरू की कड़ी आलोचना करते थे, पर 2014 के बाद वो नेहरू के प्रशंसक बन गए हैं, क्योंकि जो विकल्प वो देख रहे हैं उनके सामने उससे भी खतरनाक है। तो आई थिंक वी शुड बिल्ड ऑन दिस एडवांटेज। आई थिंक वी आर गेटिंग अ लॉट ऑफ एम्यूनिशन फ्रॉम the current ideology, from the current ruling dispensation, to expand the Nehruvian footprint. And I believe if we embark on initiatives like the digital archive, and I agree with Aditya that we need more public action to take the messages of Nehru. The Bharat Jodo Yatra was one such exercise. The Bharat Jodo Nyaya Yatra was another exercise. And I'm sure there will be more such movements, more such initiatives to take Nehru to the people, the ideas of Nehru, not just the person, but the ideas of Nehru to the person. Finally, I just want to say that many political leaders aspire to be great. I think it's somewhat easy to be a great leader, but it's very difficult and almost impossible to be a great and good leader, a great and good man. And I think Nehru aspired not just to be a great leader, but Nehru aspired because of the Gandhian influence, because of the influence of Tagore, because of the influence of his father, and many other influences. Nehru aspired to be a good man. And I think if you go through the Nehruvian archive, if you go through the Nehruvian material, this goodness comes out in him. And I want to end by an example of that goodness concerning the person who has written the foreword to this book. The foreword to this book has been written by, as Professor Mukherjee said, India's most distinguished living historian, Professor Irfan Habib. And in August 1955, Irfan Habib's scholarship to Cambridge University had been turned down by the Home Ministry and the Education Ministry, then headed by Maulana Azad. The Home Minister was Kailash Nath Karju, the Education Minister was Maulana Azad, and the files, which are available in the National Archives, to those of you who are interested, the files said that the scholarship should be denied to this young man because he belongs to the Communist Party. And Zakir Saab prevailed, who was then the Vice Chancellor of Aligarh Muslim University, prevailed on the Prime Minister to meet Irfan Habib. So on the 12th of August 1955, Irfan Habib actually goes and meets the Prime Minister. Prime Minister in 1955 was at the height of his glory, but he finds time to meet this young student from AMU, and immediately, maybe a few hours after his meeting, he writes a letter which is available on the internet to those of you who are interested, writes a letter to Zakir Saab, a long letter about his conversation with Irfan Habib. And he says, personally, I have nothing against communists. I'm not a communist, but I have nothing against communists. But I do think that communists often behave like Jesuits, who are over scrupulous who are not very scrupulous in their dealing with others, but over scrupulous in adhering to the dogma of their creed. And then there's a long letter that he writes. At the end, of course, he says, I'm recommending to the Education Ministry that this young man be given the scholarship. It's a wonderful story, and there are numerous stories like this where Nehru actually overcomes his ideological predilections and takes decisions. And these examples, the way he dealt with a young Atal Bihari Vajpayee is now part of the BJP's folklore in the late 50s and early 60s. The way he dealt with Ram Manohar Lohia. And recently I discovered an extraordinary exchange between Govind Vallabh Pant and Jawaharlal Nehru on Jayaprakash Narayan, who Akshay Mukul is writing a biography of Jayaprakash Narayan. And in that context, we were having a discussion, and I just found this letter where the entire Congress party was critical of Jayaprakash Narayan. And Nehru said, if there's one man whose integrity I will vouchsafe for, it is Jaiprakash Narayan. And I will always say that this is a young man in whose hands the future of India is safe. This is 1948. I think these are the examples of goodness. I think there are people who aspire to be great, but few aspire and actually achieve being good. And I think that was the characteristic of the man whom we remember today. And I congratulate Professor Mukherjee for writing this very readable account of Nehru's ideas, not of Nehru's life per se, but of Nehru's themes, Nehru's ideas, and his contributions that are very relevant even today. And I learned much from the interventions of the other speakers, particularly the point that was made that of all the stars of the independence constellation, the man who is demonized the most is Nehru. And there's a reason why, as Professor Patnaik explained, there's a reason why he alone of that remarkable generation ends up being demonized. And I think we should recognize that. The fight is not lost. The odds may look very heavy in the current circumstances, but I think we owe it to him to keep this battle on. I think that is the least he would have expected from us. Thank you.